gentlemen, Dana Walker and Dana Walker and Bruce, personal workings of the board. And inner workings, inner operations and things that were not necessarily, well, and particularly with these two men who have had hostility and history with Media Island in the past. And so these men, Dana Walker publicly did a newsletter. He did one last year, and he wrote a lot of threatening, traumatizing, inciting to violence things in his newsletter and sent out to an email list. There were community members that were sending stuff back into him saying, hey, this is racist, this is sexist. And this was during the time that all that stuff was happening at Evergreen. So the women of color, the black women in particular, were getting death threats because of the teacher and the instructor that was happening. So this was connecting to that. And so kind of identifying that I'm this person who has done this person wrong. We did a response.
Death threats from?
I'm talking about the death threats that were happening to the women of color on campus. So it was happening in our community as a whole.
Okay.
And so that connection was out, this is out in public.
Okay.
So this is last year. The board responded, which was me, Tom, and Jimmy, did a response letter. Rick Fellows refused to sign that letter denouncing what Dana had done then. I was wanting to take legal action then, but was talked out of it and saying, oh, well, he'll just get over it and this or that passed. And so I was talked out of it. I really wanted to pursue legal action, restraining order. I myself have domestic violence in my background. And so that being triggering, threatening, and it makes me on high alert as far as safety and safety for others as well. Because I've also been a domestic violence an advocate for people in trauma and abuse and that kind of thing. So then this year, it happens again, but it happens because Rick Fellows is sharing information with Bruce and Dana Walker. And so Dana then goes in his newsletter and says a number of things about me, about what I do. Bruce Wilkinson then follows it up with, yes, she's living there at the house, letting the public know this is where you can go and get her, and inciting those kinds of things. Then Rick Fellows then also states and says in his public Facebook post that following up with that, and then we have some copies of that, maybe we should start passing these down the way. We have what we're passing around now is a comparison letter of something that he had stated last year versus what he had posted publicly for people to read on Facebook this year. Now I have, because of this, had to go talk to several lawyers, and one of the ones that I spoke with was like, this is of course slander, but it's also threatening. It's also a breach of information and putting another one board member, potentially two, putting another board member in harm's way. And so that's what I'm having to deal with, and having to take the time and effort to go to and they also advised me strongly to make a police report. Mm-hmm. They said that I should have done it last year, but this year in particular. Now the connection with Bruce Wilkinson is that he has been known and currently is known to support inappropriate folks in the neighborhood, such as a Proud Boy, one of the white supremacist groups, publicly, and inciting violence to other women in other campaigns in Seattle. So that's another thing. Because of this has brought on other things that Bruce Wilkinson in particular is connected to. So that's more putting me in danger as a board member, but also as a woman. And so the liability, that also makes the organization liable, because there's a history and a legacy of not listening to women, of letting problematic, dangerous men facilitate, and be on the property. People have taken the time to write letters, and this is all documented. So if someone wanted to take us as an organization and sue us, they could, they still can. Yeah. And I'm in a position where lawyers are saying, hey, this is really serious for you. And this is a legacy. And so what we're wanting to do is stop this legacy. So that's some of what I have around liabilities, but also breach of information. There's more in details. I'm missing someone. Breach of information, and just constantly, stating, 816, you have free rent, you have free utilities, as if other folks like Dana Walker wasn't staying there in that space under those same conditions. But why let the public know this constantly, if not to incite and giving giving one-sided misinformation as far as how things are going, how systems are working, what the roles are, what the so that's a whole piece. And like I said, I'm currently talking to lawyers now and having to do a police report, and that's traumatizing because that's something that's bringing that back up for me again.
I'll just add on to that, and we'll open it up for some questions. And it's going to include the other item of the breach of confidential information, so it kind of lumped those together. Basically, what ended up happening is there was a breach of confidential board information. It caused further harm to Shauna and the organization by divulging it publicly, let alone to people who have been problematic with MII and already for a long time, namely Dana and Bruce. So that consisted of who is and is not on what bank account. It's just not appropriate to get that out in the public. Divulging that a board member lives on the site as a caretaker. All the public needs to know that there is a caretaker, not who they are. And then divulging Shauna's personal financial business to a degree by publicly stating that she is, quote, receiving free rent and utilities. Publicly implying that Shauna is untrustworthy, that she is someone who is collecting monies from the use of the house as if she's profiting personally from her efforts, rather than what she's actually doing, which is managing the flow of funds into the overall budget, something Rick has said desperately needed to happen. This is outrageous. It's implying that she's stealing from the organization and the public. Talk about creating a false narrative. It's not cool. It's a wrong impression. Misrepresenting the roles and positions in the organization and Shauna's relationship to them. As a result, it's misleading the community and warping their understanding of our internal affairs. The biggest thing about that breach of confidential information is we've made all these efforts to work together and deal with this at a board level. And that wasn't going on and working and broke down, and then Rick, etc., decides to take it public and not really discount or challenge what Dana and Bruce were saying, and basically added fuel to the fire. And it just goes aside from a process of trying to work it out.
So, what is this news to you?
It's a false narrative that I don't trust. It's their version of what they're saying based on an organization that really never has had liability issues until Jimmy came back, and then Shauna came on, and then all this stuff started to come down.
What about the
And they're
people
denying,
who share
they're
this?
denying
Let
their
him finish.
complicity.
Let's let
They're
Tom
denying
finish and
their
come around the table.
complicity in creating a situation now that's become a hostile relationship. I've never been in, I mean, we've had to manage things. Yes, we had to manage Bruce, and there is a whole story around that that Jimmy was involved with, and I wish Rick were here to tell that story. And yes, Dana, I mean, I signed on to the letter. There's no argument that Dana has a very rough countenance, and that's part of his kind of, I don't know, I guess trying to be more left-wing than everybody else and trying to prove to the world that I am the greatest pundit that, oh my God, this is New York.
He's violent and he's abusive.
This is where, I think that you construct a narrative, and because this narrative has been repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated against Rick and myself, that I'm tired of it. I'm ready to take back the board and to say, okay, my position is, you're great, you've done great as volunteers. I appreciate all the volunteer work that you've done. I appreciate that you've come back after your 15-year hiatus and jumped into something that you helped create, and you're doing that. I would appreciate a relationship where you continued on that path, doing what you're doing. I have said that. I wanted to have an agreement on that. What I got was a legal citation. So now, now we're in the legal world. So all I can say is, yes, talk with your lawyer, make the police report, let's go to court, and we'll settle it in court.
Okay, and then Carol, did you have something you wanted to share or add?
I don't think it's really my place. Some of the information you stated was new to me.
Okay, and then Evie?
Yeah, I think I just want to speak to the claim that Jimmy and Shauna are creating a false narrative of allegations. There have been people from the community who have personally come to Shauna and written letters about the experiences that they've had in that space way before she was even there, maybe when Jimmy was gone, maybe when Jimmy was even there. And I think it's a very common tactic to discredit people when they come forward with stories of abuse, and that is a really big red flag for me. I understand that there might be some tension with you and Jimmy and Shauna, but this is not a narrative that these two are solely creating, especially when other people are coming forward to the extent of writing letters. And it's not just letters. I think Shauna has created a safe space for people to actually vocalize some of those really scary, traumatic experiences that they've had.
As
And
part of the false narrative, for 15 years, we've dealt with blame, believe me.
so all of those
sorts
are
things that have gone
untrue.
on, all sorts of shit talking, and letters, and conflict, and things that are characteristic of Olympia, Washington. It's an edgy kind of community, an edgy political community, and people come and go, and people get into trouble. And we've dealt with it. We dealt with that with Bruce. We dealt with that with Dana. We dealt with that with many others in the past. And this is more of the same. And so here we are. We're on another level of dealing with it, where Jimmy and Shauna are carrying the torch for the nature of the beast.
Can
Have
I
a- can-
directly
can I-
respond? Since
Yeah,
that
and then
was-
let me get in on the stack
Yeah,
after
y'all
that.
can jump in
That's a
after that. I
question
want to directly
directed to that.
respond. Just again, another red flag. I understand that there are people who will share false stories. I won't deny that that happens. But I think it's a huge leap to admit that you've heard people's complaints for years and years and years, but then to just flat out deny all of those. It sounds like you're saying that none of those could have possibly ever been true.
No,
and
I'm not
that's-
denying all of them. I'm saying we deal with those things. Things come up and we have to work them through, just like we're working them through now, except we're on a legal thing. You know? This is a legal meeting. It's been called by Jimmy and Shauna as a legal meeting to resolve the liability for the organization.
Okay, Jimmy.
Yeah, if I may.
Can we not skip over Carolyn too?
But
Excuse
Jimmy
me.
had one first.
Well, I
Jimmy
didn't-
had one first, then Carolyn.
Actually, I was.
Carolyn
no,
was
please.
first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, we could spend hours going back and forth, qualifying and defining what people say, and I don't think that's why anybody's here. I think that the community loves Media Island. I think that assigning definition with Dana and Bruce as it relates to Tom and Rick is not helpful. I think that Tom is not trying to dispute facts and definitions as you, Shauna, and Jimmy see them. I think that it's true when it's in the legal definitions, the parameters change quite a bit, and I don't think that's what you want.
What I want is to not be threatened. What I want is to not have to feel that I need to go make a police report because my life as a black woman is being threatened and being tag teamed by 3 men who have been very vocal in the community. So yeah, I don't want legalities, but I have to do that for protection. So do other people who are oppressed. But I'm talking about myself now, and I would like Jimmy to speak because he did have something to say to Tom.
No, thank you for that, Carolyn. Yeah, it's like I didn't bring the liabilities by coming to town. I noticed them and listened to them and tried to understand what those liabilities were. The backyard being the biggest one. It was just an accident waiting to happen and more. You know that, I know that. It's not, I know that some of the things we're talking about, you're not disputing the fact that you gave Shauna a stack of letters from people that had serious concerns that were brought to the board to you, that you gave to Shauna. She became, whoa, really? Whoa. And had found out more and more from other individuals. It's not like we or I brought the liabilities to Media Island. It's like we noticed that there were standing liabilities that needed to be corrected. We've been working on doing a cultural shift at Media Island to correct those and still stay on and with the mission. That's been my interpretation of events, is that we're doing a cultural shift from one that wasn't working that great to one that is going to work a lot better, and we're in the midst of that. I appreciate that you and Rick have said, oh, yeah, we support your current project, and that we'll just not talk for a couple years or until Shauna moves out and isn't radio station manager. And that just was completely unacceptable to me as the board president and as the co-board member with you. It's like you're not participating then. Like, if you're not going to come to a discussion, you're choosing to not participate. If you're not participating, then you might want to just walk off the board and let us continue. If you really believe in that we're on a program for a period of time between a year or two, then let us do what we need to do, which is don't vote against us opening a new bank account, and let's transition to fiscal sponsorship stuff so we can keep doing what we're doing and build the program without getting blocked.
All right, I'm gonna cut you there. So that's 20 minutes for liabilities, and we are obviously talking about breach of confidentiality too.
Right.
So we're gonna have a total of 40 minutes. So I'm gonna add 20 more.
Thank you, and maybe less, but let me just address the quote need for the way entering the legal thing. The reason that I chose to call an official board meeting and put out a notice of board meeting is because not just because I could or because we could, because it was needed to get you to the table so we could have a meeting. We need to conduct the meeting, the business of Media Island organization, by having board meetings to do certain things. Certain things can't be done without a board meeting.
Yeah, well, I disagree with you.
Well, it's just not true. You can
We could
disagree if
have
you
made-
want.
We could have made a decision.
Well, we could have, but we decided not to sign Shauna onto the U.S. bank account, even though you originally agreed that was an okay idea, then you refused. We had a 2-2 split. So what we're proposing now, and it'll come up in a little bit, is that we vote to make a resolution that we can bring to a bank and open a bank account that Shauna and I can be on. So that's something we'll do later. But the legal need to calling an official board meeting with a notice of board meeting isn't like us going legal. Shauna going to an attorney to find out what's needed to happen with issuing a cease and desist letter to someone in the community that she should have done last year in a police report that I talked her out of, I think is a prudent move given the nature of where Dana is at. And I'm really finding it very unfortunate that you, and especially Rick, were so continuing to kind of back Dana's narrative and support that behavior of him and Bruce into the past and the current.
False. I do not back Dana's narrative, and
I don't feel you did,
I-
but Rick is, and he can
Well, let
speak to
him-
that himself. So
Yeah,
I'm just
I
finishing
agree.
my little piece, and I'll stop. I appreciate that. So that's basically what I had to say. My main thing was that you've been rejecting participation, and that this is basically showing an unwillingness to do the deep work of having these difficult conversations. When you don't want to come to meetings and you're saying, oh, I'm being bullied, when it's basically, yeah, it's challenging and it's uncomfortable, but it's important discussion that needs to occur. If you're not going to participate in that, then we're done here. And I don't want to be done here,
I
but
said
that's
I
kind of
will
where it's at.
participate under certain circumstances, and I made that proposal, and then we went legal.
The proposal
Now
was
it's in
we
a-
won't,
it's in
we
a
can't
hostile
do.
situation.
The proposal was we can't do face to
I'm
face.
going to be angry and make verbal attacks. So that's where it seems, I mean, I'm confronting Molly's opening lines for this meeting, that it would be necessarily a hostile meeting with verbal attacks. When there's hostility, I don't mean I'm angry or I'm going to verbally attack anybody. When it's hostile, I mean that there have been legal notifications made to legally bring us to the table. It's unprecedented in the history of the island. I wish we could manage it
I
outside of the
actually need to
legal
say
system
something.
because, I'm against the legal system.
Okay,
Shauna,
so
Karen?
and I really feel strongly about this, that we are talking about legalities of the board. And in my opinion, in my feeling, the liability issues that I brought up took a back seat. I am talking about being threatened. I am talking about a board member. Okay, so I said I didn't know for sure if it was you too, Tom. I've heard some things, but I do know for sure that Rick has shared very sensitive information and supports these two very dangerous men. Okay, so that's the major thing that makes a liability to our organization, but to the organization as a whole. So those are things, and people that have come forward in the past to both you and Rick, who feel like those weren't addressed as board members, that's also a liability to the organization. So I'm saying that that legacy, along with what's happening now with me as a board member, is a continuation of that negligence
It's a
of the
front
board.
That I was
what we're
that
doing
I
is
was
a front
involved
up
in too.
situation to continue what we see as a
We have
hostile
we
takeover.
have Rick's,
It's a hostile takeover.
but we have
I
Rick's
understand that's your position.
public,
My position.
we shared, I believe I shared Rick's public Facebook post of where I live, what I'm doing. That is that's a liability. That's putting one board member's personal information, personal work situation out into the public and detailed information that they don't need to know. Do you not think that that's legal
I
and
wish Rick
important?
were here to talk about that. I'm not going to speak for Rick about it.
But you saw the post? I gave you a copy. Did you see the Facebook? So, and I heard Carol, you say that
I don't see the
you.
address. That's one thing.
Well, that's what Bruce shared on Rick's post. So here's,
Bruce
let me give you
said
some
this
more.
has got-
Well, okay, let me give you
It
some
adds
more.
up.
The other person
There's
that's why.
documentation of Bruce and Rick going back and forth on public social media talking about 816 Adams. Then there's Rick talking about, you get free rent and utilities and such, corroborating what Bruce and Dana are saying together. Now, you weren't physically, saying this, but they were.
I don't have Bruce's and Rick's.
Okay, but the lawyers do.
communication here. Is that-
No, I can get that to you. If you don't have it, I'll get it for you.
But that, so in just by word of mouth, though, I'm saying that this is what has happened and we have this documented. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think you should report it to the police, and it's good that you consult legal about it.
But wouldn't your first response be, there's no way I want you to feel unsafe where you live, Shauna? There's no way I would defend anybody who you felt is racially or sexually attacking you or your safety in any way?
My safety.
Isn't that what she needs to hear?
I've always been concerned about people being safe at Indian Island. They always have been. And I am hearing that Shauna doesn't feel safe there, and that led me to the conclusion that that may not be a good place for her to be if she doesn't feel safe there.
So that isn't an okay reason for you to try to discriminate against anyone who's saying that they feel safe or that they don't feel safe or they have a domestic violence or abuse backgrounds, because I'm aware of the dangers, which is why people have come to me and said, hey, we've always been afraid in that space, mostly women and femme and LGBTQ people. We've always been afraid, and we've tried to go to Tom and Rick. They've done nothing. We didn't know who Jimmy was because he was out of town, but a few of them have talked to him on the phone. But they said they've gone to you, just like what I'm doing now. So the whole, energy that you're giving is the same that's been happening over the years. It's a liability, it's a problem, it's negligence on the behalf of the organization.
I disagree with that. We've dealt with these things, and we are continuing to do it.
If we actually dealt with them well, they wouldn't keep coming up, but they have kept coming up. And that's actually where I've been saying, look, I'm done with not really dealing with it. And so in terms
me,
of,
I
don't
think
trust that you'll be
I
able
want
to
to
deal with it.
make a comment. I really believe that when it comes to personal safety, as a board member, I am liable for what happens in the space that we operate, and making sure that there are very clear rules and they're written and they're shared with people, and that the whole issue about safety is talked about in a place where we're talking about social justice. I can't imagine not addressing issues of basic personal safety. That is very odd.
We're a 40-year-old organization that's never had safety issues, safety complaints, but you have not been attacked. I mean, you've been verbally attacked in cyberspace. You haven't been attacked on site, or, I mean, I haven't heard, I'm not hearing the incident. It's fear. That's what I'm hearing. Fear.
the incident is the
Carolyn,
environment
Carolyn
of
was-
unsafety. Carolyn, please, yes.
It's seems really simple to me that if there's an issue of personal safety, that needs to be dealt with so that everybody can agree. I think that there's been a lot of issues at Media Island, and it's never been such a big dispute that we're paying a mediator sitting at a legal table. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing if there's an issue that needs to progress. So what I'm hearing is that people come to Media Island, they don't feel that safe all the time because of other people hanging out there. That's a real thing. And all that needs to happen is everybody needs to sit down and make sure that it doesn't continue to happen like it has been. And when Jimmy came, I was here, and there was an issue in the yard, and everybody worked together, and now there isn't an issue. And that's what needs to happen, is everybody needs to work together.
I'd like to interject. Everybody didn't work together.
No, I didn't say that.
you said-
Everybody did work together.
Yeah, and I'm saying they didn't. That I just want to give some more information on it. That was actually bit by bit, the fence went up, but that took me and Jimmy actually physically, hey, this is closed. Me being there on the ground, because that was scary going through that backyard as well, but I had volunteers come and help me with that and that kind of thing. So Rick and Tom didn't work on that. Shauna was
That's
on the
not true.
ground working
That's
on
not
that.
true.
That's
because-
false. It's
No,
a
Rick,
false,
okay.
and it's a false
Rick and Tom were
narrative.
involved in
See,
the
this is my
discussion since I
concern.
got
False
back.
narrative, false narrative, false narrative. And then, oh yeah, there are these concerns and we're afraid and it's not a safe space and we're going to make it into a safe space. You know, it's a breach of trust. There's no trust.
But you have people that love Media Island, you have Rick and Tom, they're invested in Media Island. It's not about getting rid of them because you find them challenging or complicated on an issue that needs to be addressed. It's a matter of dealing with the issue practically, even through the challenges and complications. There's a deal about elders getting snuffed, you know, that I am feeling very sensitive about. And I see it happening here, and I see it happening in other venues of our community. And that's one of the reasons I'm here.
Let me actually respond to that directly. We've been very adamant about the need to discuss these issues in context with each other with proper support and facilitation. It has not occurred due to Rick and Tom not wanting to, I think, and this is where I'm trying to ask you the question. If you're not willing to have challenging conversations, that's
It's
one
false
thing.
narrative. I came to a meeting. and
You
had a
came, but you
challenging
didn't come to that
conversation.
last meeting because someone
But
else
see,
was there.
You know, you lie,
Yeah.
and then you say, oh, but you didn't come to the last meeting.
What was the lie?
You say, you didn't. You haven't done it. With Rick, it's the same thing. Rick did come. It really isn't
Yeah.
an effective format.
I'm uncomfortable with you saying they're not willing to deal with challenges.
Well, that's kind of
or
what I'm
they
trying to
don't come
ascertain because they
meetings.
haven't been coming to
And-
meetings that we've been trying to conduct.
And
But I don't-
excuse me, wait. I'm uncomfortable with the agenda changing. So we're talking about liabilities and breach of information that did happen. We do have it documented. We're also talking about, and I kind of do a little bit later, maybe address your snuffing of the elders. The elders in this particular situation, I have worked with and I have tried to work with. I've tried to go and ask Rick if he could help me with certain things, and he's told me he's going to quit. He doesn't want to. So I've had to go to other people. So I'm not really sure. I have a feel in my heart for elders that are going to be there and support what's going on and give their gifts, but not just stand to the side and just expect hands-off approach is not going to be okay. It's not going to work. So I hear what you're saying with that, but that's not what here's at the table. That's not the backstory, and I understand that you don't have the full backstory, but I've been on the ground there and have the full, backstory. So that's not what, in my mind, that's not what's going on here. But I'm going to say, that this is asking them because of a legacy of letting things happen, people coming to the table, complaining, stressing that they have not felt safe, and a number of other things, and the facility not being, clean and all kinds of things. That's what brings us to where we're at right now, and the refusal of Rick and Tom to come to the last couple of meetings and have this discussion.
And let me jump in there because it's also addressing Tom directly and also Carolyn, what you just brought up. The idea of that they're not coming to meetings. What we've gotten over the last several weeks in letters back and forth is stating that looks, intractable matters, not able to resolve this, doesn't seem possible this time, not necessarily productive at this time. Rick has refused. Rick, says, I refuse to participate in fake mediations, and that you're not at this time willing to continue face-to-face meetings until such time as Shauna moves out. So they're basically saying, well, when Shauna moves out and she's not radio station manager, then we'll meet with you face-to-face. That's what they've said in letters. I'll share those with you. It's not cool. So I had to do a notice of board meeting to get them to come today so we could have this conversation and proceed and move the organization forward. That's what I'm doing, and that's what this is. It's not a false narrative. That's a narrative. It's actually true. I can show it and prove it. And I feel in my heart that Rick and Tom want to have these discussions, but only under certain circumstances. And they're not particularly, it's not working. And we need to have some level of conversation.
It's 7:05, and this is what the topic actually was. Well, here's okay. Not at this time though. So we have two things to vote on. We talked about breach of information. We didn't go into that at all and talk about how that was wrong. Nobody's addressing that. We're skipping We're skipping over. Hey, what about this breach of information? And all I'm hearing in his response is a false narrative when we have documentation. Mm-hmm. This man has done several newsletters out to the community inciting, slandering my name, defamation of character, and Rick has corroborated that with his writings along with Bruce supporting, and people in the community have seen that and given feedback on social networks and in person. So that's the issue at hand. We skip over that and get to, can we all just get along and come to several meetings? No, that's not where we're getting.
We're in a polarized situation.
Right.
That's the problem with this meeting, is we're in a polarized situation. I don't know that we're going to be able to decide anything.
We're going to decide a couple of things.
Yeah, well,
so
proceed with your hostility.
Okay, so the next thing is the voting to open up a new bank account. If we can go ahead with that one.
I just want to state that I don't consider it hostile. I consider it, we're conducting the business of the organization. One of the ideas is to move it forward. We need to have access to a bank account that we can utilize for the organization. And right now, Rick is not participating with me on that level in a way that's adequate. So Sean and I are seeking to open up a bank account that we can work with and use, and we're also seeking the second thing, which we'll get to.
So let's
the second resolution. Well, let's state it and say it.
Can I actually interject as the
Yes.
timekeeper? So we still have 4 minutes left for liabilities and breach of confidential board information. Are you wanting to roll that time over to these voting resolutions?
Yes.
Is that what we're
Yes,
doing
and
now?
we'll have some more time at the end,
Okay,
possibly.
so then we'll have
to-
14 minutes for those
Right.
two voting issues then. Or go
Actually, we
on.
want to give them less than that, but it'll probably be less than that.
Sure.
So, can we go ahead to the first resolution?
Well, okay, so I passed down, there's one sheet that has two pieces on it. One is the opening of a bank account, and the second one is transfer of fiscal sponsorship duties. So if Tom, you could review the first one that talks about a bank account, which is actually an idea I got from you. You suggested that we open up another bank account, and we also appreciated that for a time you were open to the idea of Shauna being on the bank account. We understand you changed your mind. I had a resolution all prepared. I know you changed your mind. I know why. That gave us in a bit of a stalemate. We realized that in order to open a bank account for the organization that's new, we need a board resolution. I'm proposing that we pass a board resolution, given that we have a quorum, given that we have voting members, that we vote on the question of whether or not the resolution passes to open a bank account at a credit union. And I propose that we do that. I have a second.
A second.
And then I'd like to take a vote on this resolution that says that we should open a bank account. It's a basic banking resolution that all corporations do when they need to open a bank account. All in favor say aye.
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 No,
All opposed no. Tom says no.
I object.
Be it recorded that 2 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion passes. We have authority for a bank resolution, and we'll draft that up and get it opened.
So,
Next.
since quorum's only 2,
Mm-hmm.
then you and Shauna are on the board, so by your bylaws, you can just vote and that's that.
On certain things, not everything.
Okay.
But we didn't want to do it without, trying to have an actual meeting and participate with the rest of the board members. This is why we're here. We didn't want to just do it and not tell anyone. We wanted to actually have a meeting.
Well, this is
It
what
happens.
I'm
Well,
saying.
excuse me.
Doing
No,
it.
that's what
Well,
we need mediation. We've
that's
already
how-
voted. Let's go to the next resolution, please.
That's fine. I'm just pointing out to Carolyn that that's actually how it works.
Okay.
I've seen how
We can
it
talk about
works.
that
Okay.
afterward. Can
Yeah,
we
thank
go
you.
to the next?
The second resolution, thank you for participation in the first one. Second resolution is, talks about transferring of the fiscal sponsorship duties and responsibilities to, in 2 phases from Rick to Jimmy. And I want to point out as a preface to this, we've discussed the fact that Rick has been doing that job for a hell of a long time. He's tired of it. He doesn't want to keep doing it necessarily. He and I spoke at length about me taking over those duties, a bunch of which I already do myself anyway, and it's not a burden for me to take those on and execute them faithfully. So we talked about that, and that transfer got stalled in the recent split and stalemate that we've been going through. So I propose that we do a resolution that helps confer the transfer of the fiscal sponsorship duties and responsibilities in the organization from Rick to Jimmy. Something I've discussed with Rick, something I've mentioned to Tom in the last letter. And this resolution basically authorizes that to occur and directs Rick, with the help hopefully of Tom, the secretary, to get that information to Jimmy in 2 phases. I'll read the language here and you can hear it. Transferring the fiscal sponsorship responsibilities is a resolution. I want to make a motion to vote on this resolution. Any second?
Second.
All right. So I want to read it actually. So it says, first, the materials and information, paper files and copies of the electronic files from Rick over to Jimmy to be housed at the offices at the island. We want to move it from Rick's place. He's been wanting to get rid of this. We would like this transfer to be accomplished by 1 week from today, by Wednesday, September 5th. It doesn't seem an unreasonable amount of time. The second phase would be transitioning the banking element of the fiscal sponsorship duties over from Rick at U.S. Bank to Jimmy at the new credit union account. We would like this to be accomplished within 1 month from today, by Friday, September 28th. It is understood that there are some checks and grants in process and in transit with some of the projects, and that these can all be slowly transferred in this time frame without any disruption. Communications with the project's principal people managing those projects is something that already occurs periodically with Rick as needed and annually with Jimmy for the purposes of the IRS reporting requirements, asking them for budget and narrative reports. This is about to occur for this year's IRS filing, which is due by December since we got an extension. So emails and calls will be made to all the projects letting them know Rick is passing those duties to Jimmy, who will be their point person at the organization for help with their sponsorships. All those in favor of this resolution to help with the transferring of fiscal sponsorship, say aye.
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 Shauna Hawk saying aye.
Aye, Jimmy.
I abstain since
All
Rick
those
is
in
not
favor?
here to vote.
Okay. Be it noted that Tom is abstaining, and the motion carries 2-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you. Those pieces of business are conducted.
The motion passed.
The motion is passed, and the resolution will be drafted and executed. Thank you for helping that piece of business get done.
Okay, so it's 7:13, and what I suggest, or I'd like to move us to the next topic of asking Tom and Rick to step down off the board. And I'm bringing this up, so I'm thinking this is some time we have for discussion, and some time that we, can go around the table and kind of, discuss. So I think I shared a lot, me, Shauna Hawk, as far as my history and as far as what brought me to this point when I came on board. I would like to just say that was not my intention. I knew you, Tom, from past, and we've had some good connections, and I actually look forward to being mentored by you. And what I've heard about Rick also had me wanting to look forward to. I was asked to be on the board. I didn't ask to. I was asked by the previous group. I was asked to be the station manager. I say this in my Dear Community letter, which I will share with you also, Carol, and I think if you're interested, some more documentation. So those aren't roles that I came in and said I want to take. Those are roles that were needed, and people asked me to take them. And I was like, okay, well, I'm available and I have the qualifications, I'll do that. As I was on board, the community outreach and that kind of thing, no one was doing that. Nobody was doing the grant writing. No one was, I was doing. I had the capabilities, and so I stepped up and I did that. Now, what transferred? What happened? Me and you continued to have some conversation. It was definitely a whole lot easier to have that conversation with you. I tried a few times to reach out to Rick personally, one-on-one, with a few things, having Grub and the veterans try to come on the property and that kind of thing, to always hitting a wall. Rick said he was going to start a radio show, and I was like, kept asking him, hey, when is that going to happen? And that never happened. You said you were going to come and do office hours. That never happened. That was 2 years ago. So I just moved forward with volunteers in the community and that kind of thing. We did a 4 to 5 page report on the work that me, hugely, and Jimmy has done with bringing money in. I've brought money in since I came on board, and the partners that that I have made connections in the community. And that report by Rick was just met with nothing, no response. You at least said it would take an army of volunteers to do all of this, so you at least acknowledged it, but it was not acknowledged by any way, all the work that I've done. I just felt like it was a slap in the face. Then when this episodes happened with Dana, and I truly believe that Dana should have left out with the first group. I understand he was working the radio then, but he was pretty pissed off that his friends were asked to leave. And I was also asked to mediate between the board and that group because there were problems there. So yeah, I just want to just say this just for the record, that I was asked to take on these roles. And I also have documentation of what I've done, my vision, and where I'm at now. And this is really heartbreaking for me to have to relive trauma and have to be, have to go through what I'm going through with these men and the lawyers and legalities, and not be able to do the underground social justice community building work that I can focus on and do. I have to spend time and energy and effort into doing this. It's very taxing. It's very stressful. It's affecting my health. And I just wanted to say that for the record. We can go maybe around the circle if people want to, or, let's go around and people want to chime in.
I'll just go next and we can go around, but it's breaks my heart to even go there and say, hey, we need to just step off the board. It just blows my mind. But when I look back at all this stuff and I'm just not seeing this willingness to have these conversations, even though I hear your and Rick's proposal, which A, makes no sense on its face to just not have a meeting until after Shauna moves in a year or two. That to me makes no sense. And B, the call for a public meeting to hash these issues out, when that is supposed to occur without us at least attempting to have some kind of mediation to work it out amongst ourselves to figure out where we actually stand and what's going on. I personally am still open for that. Sean is over it. I would love to see that happen, but I don't see the willingness on your guys' part. If that's the case, if you're not willing to do that, then I think it's time to stop. If for some reason you actually want to make it happen, I would be great, but I don't see that happening. So that's where I'm at. Next person.
Molly, did you want to chime in, or you want to go back?
I'm really wanting to hear from Tom.
One thing that I have kept saying, if I say something positive, I can the polarized part of it.
Give us the shit sandwich.
Yeah, before I start shit talking. Before I express what I think is the reality of the situation, is that I do appreciate that both of you have put in a big effort to volunteer for the island. I acknowledge that. I see that. I realize I don't get acknowledged for helping with that I have been in there with you volunteering as well to help make that happen and being supportive over this period. I see both of you being very interested in having a certain kind of program. And because of your program, there's been increased frustration and hostility. This is my narrative. I wish Rick were here. This is what happened last time we had this session. So I had Carolyn here, at least as a witness, that Rick needs to express his position on this, that you are challenged to develop a program that you would like to develop, that you have a vision for the program that you would like to develop. From our standpoint, there's not a trust there. I mean, I don't have faith that what you're doing is going to work itself out, but I want to see it succeed. And that was the basis for my proposal that gets discounted continuously. And to me, it's a hostile discounting of the idea to allow Shauna and Jimmy to have the leeway to develop the program in their image, and that my preference would be that they do that as staff people, not as board members. That the board really is more in a position of encouraging an openness of the space to the community. Now, granted, there is trouble when we're completely open. That's why there is a case to be made for shutting it down to the degree that it has been shut down and controlling the participation on site to have it be a safe place. And I understand that argument and am willing to compromise my position, but not with the two of you as board members. I see the board having more of a liability, and mostly a liability issue, and an encouragement for community involvement. And that's the path that Rick and I have been on, and that's the path that I'd like to see us continue. And that's the reason for my request that Shauna and Jimmy step down from the board. Now, the other option would be for Jimmy himself to step down from the board, for Shauna to continue on the board, so that it would be a Shauna, Rick, and Tom continuation of the past board without Jimmy on the board, with Jimmy kind of leading the cause for staffing. And mainly the staffing I like because it seems like what we're looking at is jobs. But as staff people, you are capable, as Shauna has said, of bringing on money and being employed to move the organization forward. I know that's something Jimmy historically has all I mean, you put a lien on the house to grab $50,000 to employ people to really have, to make it a real organization. Rick and I would rather have it be a volunteer organization, judging by the problematic that happens when you do have paid staff people on staff, and then you have a whole another set of problems and reporting problems and management problems that come up.
So I just want to say, as a mediator, that I'm finding this useful. It really helps me. There is, that is a more traditional role for board members, but the way this has evolved, we've got the incredible programs, and there is no way to do that on limited funds. And I think there is a classic conundrum with being able to raise enough money and employ and grow the program, but they're willing to do that, and that's incredible.
I want to give my kudos, my support, my positive energy for that, but I also don't want to have to. I think the issue for me comes down to activist board as opposed to paper board, and I got into trouble for saying paper board because paper board is like paper tiger, so it's like it's not real, and the activist board is real. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if the direction that Sean and Jimmy are going are being activist staff, let's support that. Let's work that out. Rick and I will continue on the board, and Shauna and Jimmy can build the program and have jobs as the activist staff that they feel Media Island needs.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Carol?
I just felt really uncomfortable with the voting process, whether it's stated in the bylaws of your organization that way or not. It just seemed incredibly unfair. And not representative of your whole group. And I feel it's important to state that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evie?
I'm not.
Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you're
I see a lot of emotion on all sides, and that has to do with hurt. I think it's actually really simple to take the hurt issues and subjects and put them on the table and make it right. I don't think it's that hard. You know, I care about everybody here, and I care about our community. And I think we shared a long look after you had your last piece, and it sort of told me a lot, Jean. I just would really strongly caution you against strong decisions made out of hurt and fear and what's the word? It's urgency. It's I feel like you gotta get done now, and if you're away, bam! And this is the kind of energy I'm feeling. And I don't know. Once again, it's not what anybody here wants.
Well, this has been going on for 4 years. It's not.
Well, there's always been issues, you know, that people can be emotionally amped up around.
No, but these particular ones have been.
No, I am not going to dispute that personal information being shared on public media is an issue. I will never dispute that. And I think that needs to be put on the table and dealt with in an accountable and responsible way.
Are you complete?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to jump in if you're not. Oh my gosh, there's so much. Yeah, I think that I'm kind of stuck on some of the things that you just brought up, and so I think I want to maybe stick in that space because I think it is important to name the emotions behind this and not necessarily demonize emotion. And I think that sense of urgency, that piece, this isn't being acted on in urgency. I've been at Media Island for 2 years, and it's been going on for the entire time, including conversations that I have mediated. And there's been this consistent attitude of vocally saying, I support you, Jimmy and Shauna, or vocally saying, I support you, Shauna, but in action, there being really no backing of the work that Shauna has been doing on the ground. The transformations that I've been seeing in that space are worth giving time to, and I think that's the stuff that the community should know about. And I feel like there's been this process that just keeps getting tied up, and I will name it again, Tom. I know that we talked about it at the last meeting, but particularly from you, of this attitude of like, we can't ever work this out. And I honestly just don't know what to do with that attitude of this being something that has been going on and on. There have been conversations, and there's still an attitude of not being able to, or not being willing to do something about it. My expertise is in power dynamics, and a lot of what I was hearing from Tom's request is either yes to meetings if him and Rick are in control of those meetings, or a resolution that centers Rick and Tom continuing to hold all the power. I heard that in, kind of demanding that Shauna and Jimmy step into staff roles. That was reiterating that you and Rick continue to be in power on the board. And it's not just in this meeting, I continuously hear Rick and Tom centering themselves in their power, and that being where their demands lie. And I will cut myself off there. I'm sure I have other thoughts, but
Just a clarifying
Those
question,
are
you
the-
realize Shauna and Jimmy requested that Rick and I step down from the board?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's in the context of the problems that have been caused by Rick in particular, and the way he's been abusing his power on the board. And I think it's justified. That's my stance.
I would also say that it's in the context of Rick, you and Rick having the hands-off approach and having all the power all these years, and people coming to you and okay, I'll repeat some of what Jimmy said about, yeah, there have been some wonderful things that have happened in Media Island, but there's been a huge amount of not so wonderful things, in particular in the last 15 years or so. And those things come kind of heavy whenever I interact with somebody in the community. Oh, that place. So my feeling on that is that it's a new era. It's time to give another opportunity, another vision a chance. I've shared in my letter what my vision is, and to let this legacy kind of move on into a situation and a place where it is a woman of color centered and led, along with working with other partners, like-minded partners in the community. It's time to move on to another group and another vision that's similar, that builds on what y'all started, what y'all was working on all those years, but then also can evolve into something else that's on the ground, actually being led by people who is directly affected by if social justice ever happens, and if gender justice and justice for women ever happen. So that's
what an opportunity that is. Like, that's what I'm confused about. Is like, how is everyone involved in this not seeing what a beautiful opportunity that is to support Shauna and all the work that she's been doing in this vision?
There's been a lot of really good work there that a lot of people have done, and I'm not saying Shauna hasn't done a lot of good work, but I keep hearing in this meeting, throughout the whole meeting, how much work Shauna's done and how she hasn't gotten credit for that. And I keep hearing her get credit for that, but nobody is saying about all the work other people have done. So I'm frustrated with that, and I don't think it's fair. And also, like, we're constantly, abusive behavior. Well, you expect that it's abusive behavior because you have expectations of what?
I think this is going a little off.
Yeah, but
topic.
it's also,
Lots of degree.
I'm uncomfortable with name calling. And just because you expect somebody to respond some way doesn't mean that they're trying to be abusive or that they are abusive. And that goes with they're not doing anything about it too, quote unquote. Because they're not doing what you expect doesn't mean that they're not doing anything about it. Or because it's not happening as fast as you need it to, or anybody needs it to, doesn't mean that they aren't willing to deal with the issue.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I think there's a real important piece that's happened tonight. I'm really clear that there are two different approaches to what a board is and what the function of board members are. And with those two different approaches, this isn't, it's a setup for a power dynamic disaster. It's not, this is a program that is based in grassroots work and being willing to step in, see an opportunity, build an incredible program, and try to really make it stellar. The old way is to have board members who have a really different function. And largely, programs grow with other people and introducing them, and they're volunteer run. So it helps me understand this is where I think the root of the conflict has to do with power and how the orientations are to power. When someone who has been abused shares what's happened to them, that is the most difficult thing in the world to do. And it's so important to acknowledge the abuse, because no woman is going to claim that she's been abused when it just hasn't happened. I don't see that. It just doesn't happen.
It does happen, and
Well, it hasn't happened here, and what I'll say is several community members have come forward and said they've been abused in that space. When I came in as a person with a
I'm not
background
disputing
with
that.
when as a person with a background with early childhood development and advocacy for families, I came into that backyard in particular and saw a lot of dangerous stuff going on. As I know you shared, you did too, but I saw some undercover cops were coming. People were out there doing all kinds of drugs, and that was just, hey, what are we gonna do about it? So, you know, what I'm saying is there's a legacy of negligence of people of the board, Tom and Rick, taking in information, not doing anything about it according to what the community has shared. Several people in the community have shared.
Me
That's a
included,
legacy.
I'm part of that. You know, I was, whether I was in town or not, I'm responsible as well.
Very
for what happened in the
Well,
responsible.
again, I
So-
wish Rick were here to talk about that, because I think his direction is really to make it more of a community conversation, because you've got your people, and we could have letters, written long letters about what good things have happened and what positive things have happened, and letters going back and forth about how we dealt with Bruce and what happened with Bruce, and Bruce coming on, and Jimmy wanting Bruce involved, and then, you know, we could parse that out at the night. It's really, and I want to get back to the intractability question. I don't think that I'm saying that it's intractable that Shauna and Jimmy could do good and move an organization forward. I think that's possible to happen. The intractability comes in that we have a large mission, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
And the attractability, however way you're using that word, if I'm using it, is changed. That mission has changed. There's a new direction now. And so that's another reason why you're being asked to step from the board, to let the new mission come in and be given an opportunity.
And that's why I'm asking to review the step down from the board, is to be able to more effectively do what you're trying to do, and particularly to transition you from the caretaker role to more of an organizational function within the organization, working on issues of racism.
And yeah, so it sounds like we're at an impasse, and that's not
We're at an impasse, yeah.
right. So do we move to adjourn the meeting?
Not
or-
yet. Let me just add, if I may, to what's being said, because it's important, and of course, I just want to acknowledge that I have been very supportive of a lot of the good work that's been done, and I've actually said that a lot over the years, Carolyn, and sorry you didn't hear it at this meeting, but I believe that. Also know that just a few things. I just gotta remember something real quick here.
Well, I have a thought, if you want to hold
Please.
on to that. The thought is that in my letter to the community is that I also acknowledged when I first came in that I could tell some amazing things. Some people had some good ideas. So that's one of the first things that I saw. But I also saw that the people that were occupying the space and the people that were interacting, the people who I talked to in the community had no idea. There's so many people that have no idea we had a radio station. They said they've known Rick for years and had no idea that a radio station was connected to him. You know, the people that have been here for 20 and 30 years that are like, Media Island, what's that place? And I always thought that was a halfway house.
you want to represent the community.
No,
Shauna.
I'm saying what the community has shared with me. So what I'm saying is that even though there's been some good work happening, what's overshadowed it is the people that have come in, the way the house has been allowed to be just trashed. And I said that in detail in my letter, and hopefully you have a copy of that. I'll give you one. That, hey, I come from a background of social justice as well. And to be able to be donated a house and let it trash, that's white privilege. That takes a lot of privilege to just trash a house, to just let it go and be that way. You know how many people, so black and brown people on the ground, would have a place like this and be honored? They don't get places like this. This is predominantly people with white power and privilege.
You don't know where I come from.
No, I don't. I'm not speaking to
It's
you
not about
directly.
you.
It's not about you.
I know,
I'm
but you're
speaking
giving
in
me a
general.
tutorial on white privilege and
Right.
trashed houses and stuff.
Right.
And I don't want to hear it, okay?
Okay, I understand. You don't
You
have
know
to hear
why?
it. Because you come, what?
Because I don't need that. I know I've been seeing what Media Island is. I'm not arguing with you about things like that.
Right.
You're not bringing it up either, and it's
No,
needs
she
to be
did
brought
bring it up earlier. Let me move back to what I was thinking to say earlier, if I may. I hope
Please.
that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Get the look like that. I'm
Oh,
checking
the
it.
look is not directed at you.
All right, excuse me.
Mine is.
Processing.
What I was wanting to share earlier that I did a brain fart on was that one of the things I wanted to point out is I've said in writing to you guys, and I've said it verbally, is that I do recognize the eventual move to having a better community forum discussion about these things. What I been insisting on is that we work it out internally amongst ourselves as a board to figure this out and to have the right support to do that. That's one of the reasons we pulled Molly in to try to do some kind of mediation. That didn't go well or get done, and we're still sitting at the end of that. Then I get these communications back and forth about, well, it looks like it's intractable. Well, let's not have face-to-face board meetings and all that stuff I mentioned earlier that's in these letters. So there's been an openness to an actual community meeting under the right circumstances, and that's where I get all this flack for that, and I have to stand by under the right circumstances, because you don't just throw it open and hope the right people show up. You design it, you make it work. We're talking about a cultural shift. I think the biggest issue that we've been running into is a cultural shift from a kind of anything goes, boundaryless free-for-all that had a lot of great stuff going on and a lot of not good stuff going on, to a shift into a new culture that says, hey, guess what? There's racism and sexism and stuff in the world, and we're going to actually take it on and look at it, and we're going to work on safe spaces, and we're going to work on an actual organization that honors and respects where we're trying to go in the future with the current. And that cultural shift necessitated an intentional access to make the place safe. Sean has been instrumental in actually bringing around a lot of significant changes, and that is part of this new era. And the transition's already occurred. This isn't a question of whether or not we're going to transition or whether or not we're going to join, 2018. The question is, are you going to participate? And what I'm getting is, no, you're going to dig in your heels and ask for something that was going on 10 years ago, and it's not about that. A lot of great stuff happened in the past. A lot of great stuff's going to happen in the future. A lot of great stuff's happening right now. But the idea is that when you say you speak for the community, or Rick says he speaks for the community, or Shauna says she speaks for the community's out there. The community's thinking and listening and watching and looking and doing stuff or not. We're dealing with tons of community. We're dealing with all kinds of community. We're not dealing with a bunch of the people that are naysaying and staying away because they don't like Sean and Jimmy. We're not dealing with those folks. And unfortunately, you guys are camping up with those guys, and it's blowing my mind. And it's like there's a whole lot of the rest of the community that actually wants to go in this other direction, that is wide and diverse and is accessible and does have a lot of activity.
Yeah.
That's where we're going. That's what's the
this is
shift.
What's happening here. You're a fast talker. And so you'll say a whole bunch of things in a string of things and weave it all around, and then you'll get people to buy into this framing the narrative. And then when you start to parse it, it's like, wait a minute, let's take apart, let's deconstruct what Jimmy's saying.
Go ahead, deconstruct it.
And then we see, then you have to argue every point of the way. This is a problem I have actually with Bruce and Dana too. They'll put a lot of stuff out there, and you'll just throw it on the wall, and it's just mud. And then you really can't, it's not constructive.
Been trying to be
And
clear
so
in writing.
I know you try and be clear. I don't, I'm not in a position to trust. Trust has been broken. And so that's just where I am now. And that's why I wanted some distance. And I also wanted to be supportive of what you're trying to do, since basically that's, you both are very motivated to have something happen.
So I would like to move to the moving to adjourning, but then going around one more time and having some final comments. Then adjourning the meeting.
How's our time?
It is 7:43 right now, so we have less than 20 minutes to do a final round of share backs.
How about we start with you, Evie, and come around this way, and then, how about that? Would you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I am really I'm noticing a lot of derailing, and I am really trying hard not to be a part of that. So I actually feel like I have said what I want to say. I have some like personal qualms with some things that have been said, but I don't know that this is the space for it.
Please just say it.
Oh, I feel that, honestly, Carolyn, I feel like you made a lot of things about me and a lot of statements that, and maybe I'm assuming that they were about me, but it felt like some things were directed at me, and I don't feel like this was a meeting about the two of
I
us,
didn't
so.
intend to direct anything.
Okay,
at
that's
all.
helpful to kind of clarify then, because I felt like that was happening, and I appreciate you mentioning that it wasn't happening, and that maybe those were just
I wouldn't
generalized.
understand, how you would interpret
Yeah,
this.
maybe it was just the generalized statements then. So I feel fine to pass either way. Shauna, do you need time or do you want to go
I'll
ahead?
come around this way. Go ahead,
Okay,
Carol, if
so
you'd like to say
yeah,
something
go
else.
right ahead then. I have taken up plenty of space.
And Carol, here's those letters you might not have had. That's some board correspondence and the Dear Community letter, just for your reference. You can check it out.
Thank you.
A little
Thank
bit
you.
more context.
Well, I appreciate being able to voice my opinion. I didn't plan on that. I was going to try to keep my mouth shut.
We appreciate your words.
I just hear from both. I just hear this like Tom and Rick have to do it their way, and I hear that from you too. Jimmy and Shauna have to do it their way. I pretty much feel like this meeting was run by Jimmy and Shauna.
Yeah, it was.
The president and the vice president.
And the secretary's in attendance. And Rick didn't show up with childcare.
I'm really sorry that happened.
Me too.
I need to.
They'll get the recorded conversation, and there'll be opportunities for future meetings. So
And there will be opportunities for future meetings.
Actually, we'll let you know what we're going to be doing in 2 weeks. We've made some votes, and so we'll let Tom and Rick know what'll happen in 2 weeks.
Oh,
And Tom, did you have anything?
Well, I mean, this has been a really uncomfortable, draining process. I wish it didn't have to come to this. I don't really like being in a polarized situation with people. I wish there were more common ground and ability to move forward. I kind of accept, I mean, it's sort of like accepting death. You have to, when it comes, you have to accept it.
Change is hard, but it's necessary.
I don't agree that the changes that are happening. I was particularly uncomfortable, Molly, with you starting out assuming anger and verbal attacks would be part of your needing to put a cap on. Having that assumption showed me that you had already polarized, assuming that Rick and I would be were angry and verbally attack in the situation. It started out with a huge cloud over an entire thing that I didn't want to have to happen this way. I wanted to be honored in my proposal to support you to do it the way that I wanted it to be done. I wasn't going to ask for a board resignation, just that we support you to do and continue on the path that you're doing, which has an open-ended support for Shauna to have housing and an open-ended possibility for both of you to be employed doing things towards the mission and towards particular issues that you're concerned in the island. I wasn't. I feel upset that my initiatives were not honored or really overridden by what I see as hostility. So I can live with that. I've done my time. I've made a large commitment to the island, and I think part of my longevity has to do with moving to make it more community involved and get community and bring people into the community. There's a price to pay for that, because you're not always going to get great people from the community. You're going to get people sometimes grace Dana who are problematic. By the same token, when you work for those people and piss them off, this is also what's going to happen. So I think some culpability about pissing Dana off, particularly the decision to not put Dana to the trade for 4 years, that was the top trigger for Dana that sent him into, turned him into a raging lunatic. I sorry for me to apologize for being a lunatic. It's just that's Dana. To frame it as negligence, I resent that. I'm really against that framing of it, and it seems like that's part of the hostile takeover. Jamie and Shauna have framed it as the past has sucked, and the future is going to be flawless, and that we're going to come in, we're going to control the whole thing, and we're going to bring us to a better future. I tried to compromise from that. At this point, I just feel polarized, and I don't know where to take that.
Thank you, Tom.
So my observation was pretty simple. On a feeling note, it feels really sad. It's just a sadness that I can sense in the room, and I want to say that what was behind my comments about anger was what I read, was in terms of what I read, the materials that have been coming out reflective of how people are treating each other. And my job as a mediator is to set ground rules, and I was just very clear. I was not going to allow people to tear each other apart.
I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of the tearing apart. Are those
the information that describes what's been going on?
Are those letters from people that...
Just the board back and forth, or what?
Yeah, it's the board back and forth.
Oh, the board back and forth
Yes.
you shared with you?
Well, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I've also been in lots of spaces, regardless of this
Yeah.
context, where
This is
there's
common.
always intentional ground rules that include that in particular.
Yeah, it's
I just
very
want to name
basic.
that it's not just to this context, that is a ground rule many
Yeah.
people use.
Yeah, and taking it personally is unfortunate.
It was the number
Well, I
one
know.
statement about your fear that somehow...
No, I'm just real clear about not tolerating people using violent language with each other. And that's all I wanted to do, is make that really clear.
She was seeing stuff in the writing and figured it would be a good idea to state it out loud. It's not like she's assuming you or anyone else is going to
Mhm.
jump down each other's throats. Like, let's get it out in the open.
Perhaps
She's
presenting it in terms
responsible
of
for
what
the
you've seen in
space.
the writing, because I wasn't aware that they had shared board communication, email board communication.
Well, if you remember, we were employing Molly as a mediator to work with us to make the mediation actually occur. So there was a lot of information shared personally and writing, and she's still included in that. So as we were trying to get to this meeting, she needed the context of what this meeting is, and it was absolutely appropriate, especially given her confidential relationship. She's not sending it all over the place. She's not like communicating with people that are like writing crazy shit, you know? I'm
Never.
like, yeah, so I felt it was extremely appropriate to have her be aware of the information, and still do. So.
It was very helpful.
We have 8 minutes.
Right,
Sorry.
so it's
Less.
7
minutes.
Some more, 'cause I have some things to say.
Yeah, you did. Find it really sad too, and didn't want it to get to this, and had hoped that we could do something better sooner, and I'm still wondering what the future brings. So, Shauna?
There's a couple of points that you said, Tom, that I wanted to speak to, and you said about coming in with a huge cloud, or that there was huge cloud. It was a setup to make this a huge cloud and kind of a negative meeting or whatnot. And I'd like to state that I came in with a huge cloud of negativity over me because of this situation, and because of what I've been going through, and because of a lot of the written language that has been out there, sent out there on social media, because of this whole situation of, being asked to be placed in a position of just as much power as the men on the board, and feeling like that was the main thing that was rejected. And how dare I? You talked about me and Jimmy, being, I'm just speak about me in a employee staff position. And again, those are power dynamics, and that's not what I'm looking for at all. I wanted to be an even player. I wanted to be on the account with Rick, so then when I go to pick up things from Media Island, I would have a card with my name on it, so I wouldn't have to use his card and have him refer to me as the help. Basically, why would a caretaker need the card? When you say our position should be in a labor or a staff position, I hear, yeah, we're willing to use your labor and exploit your labor, but not give you, power, not give you the same amount of power. And that's significant to me as a woman, because a black woman, to hear that, and to hear that the men have kept the power. And yes, and I'm not speaking for the whole community, just the several ones that have shared with me that those power dynamics in Media Island and the 3 men in power have kept that power. So they're like, wait, when are you you're still there kind of energy. So also, as far as talking about men like Dana and referring to Dana as, oh, that's just Dana. That's not how that's just, you use the word negligence. So referring to a man like Dana as just, oh, he has a temper, oh, it's just how he is. He's been very inappropriate and violent. There have been people at the co-op that have said, he's mentally unstable and on the edge. And knowing that and acknowledging that, yeah, he is problematic, but it's just the people that come to the door. When you have an organization, especially an organization that says that it focuses on social justice, people like me are the ones that those laws are affecting, if they happen to get passed or whatnot. Not white cis men, not white women, but predominantly women of color, predominantly black and brown folks and other marginalized groups. So you can't just let anybody walk in the door. You gotta screen. You do. People have to come to the door, and if they're problematic or if they have mental health issues, it's not, oh yeah, we'll just let